if you're going to be confrontational with them and fight them, and it's a war and it's a battle, keep in mind that you are going into that battle holding a water gun and they're driving a tank.
And if we hyper focus on it and throw all the guilt and make it like they're totally unsuccessful because of this one metric, I think we risk throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
You are going to have to fill your child up with such chinuch and love and self-esteem and confidence and perseverance that then your son or daughter will be able to stand for that. Welcome to the Learning Curve podcast, brought to you by Mishpacha magazine.
We're raising children in a changing and challenging world.
So let's tackle the important issues facing families today.
I'm Rabbi Garfield, Menal of Yeshiva Torah Zemes in Houston, and I love talking about chinuch.
I'm Rabbi Ari Schonfeld, Menal of Yeshiva Katana Manhattan, Rosh Meister of Beis Tzipra Manhattan, Director of Camp Aish. I also love talking chinuch, and of course, a little bit of fishing.
Join us as we answer your questions and discuss the topics that matter to parents the most.
As Shavuos inspiration carries us into the end of the school year, it's the perfect time to show appreciation to the Rebbeim and Moras who gave so much all year long. And how better than to explore some titles by today's episode's sponsor, Israel Bookshop Publications. For Rebbeim, few gifts say authentic growth like the newest volume in the legendary Rav Kalman Krohn series, Volume 5. Timeless stories of authentic Yiras Shamayim that continue to inspire generations. Also highly recommended, Living a Life with Bitachon, a practical, transformative guide to living with real bitachon, especially meaningful for anyone in chinuch. And the new Moments of Kedusha is already becoming a classic, filled with rare stories, hanhagos, history, and incredible photos of Rabbi Moshe Sternbuch Shlita. For Moras, the best-selling It's All Hers offers powerful first-hand interviews with the wives of our Gedolim, revealing the greatness behind the greatness. The beloved 102 Stories That Changed People's Lives series continues changing lives with unforgettable stories of Ashgacha Pratis and classic cookbooks like Table for Two and the brilliant designed Supper 1, 2, 3 are perennial favorites. Find these titles and many more at Israel Bookshop Publications, helping Klal Yisrael grow one great sefer at a time. Bruchim habayim and welcome to a very special edition of The Learning Curve. It's the finale of season 3, a wonderful season of The Learning Curve of speaking in chinuch and yoneh chinuch. We get to do it live tonight in front of an audience on Zoom, and then obviously it will be produced and posted as usual. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Garfield. How are you?
Great to see you. Can't believe it's here. It's the beginning of the end. After Shavuos, the school year sort of slides home. So that's
Yes,
this whole...
It's not a head first slide. It's more like a trot. But a public service announcement for those that are on, and maybe we'll announce this a couple of times as people continue to join. And that is one of the things we'd like to hear tonight from some of the people that are on the Zoom is, and we'll ask at the end, are some ideas for next year. Mr. Hashem will come back for season 4.
Wow.
After the summer, and some ideas, maybe what we can discuss, what we haven't discussed until now, maybe what we can continue to discuss, what has been spoken about. It's been a very special 3 seasons. It continues to be something that we feel is a tayeles, obviously for us and hopefully for the rabbim. And okay, away we go. Let's get to it.
Should I ask you a question?
So, well, I guess we'll start as follows. We'll start with a question. You can read me a question. It's fine. And then if you're in the audience and you would like to ask a question, you have one or two ways. You can either chat it. You could go on to find at the bottom of the chat and it will come to us. If you're brave enough to want to be live, you can raise your hand. Now, you don't have to raise your physical hand. Obviously, we won't see you. Most of you turned your video off. That's fine. You can turn your video on. Either way, it doesn't matter. But if you raise your hand using that emoji, raise your hand, then we'll call on you, and you could ask your question live if that fits. If you want, you can chat. Either way, let's begin.
All righty. So here we go. I see and hear for many girls, boys in shidduchim, married or just out of high school, that they feel like they have no relationship with any teacher, mechaneches, or rebbe, because they felt they didn't have any major issues or just didn't feel comfortable to talk about it when they were in high school. They were always good kids and never really stood out, so the opportunity to be noticed and spoken to are much less. Now that they are in a different stage in life, they find themselves lost and unable to ask for serious help, advice when it comes to shidduchim or in their marriages, or even what seminary is really right for them. This whole topic really concerns me because this lack of guidance can cause a really bad decision. I am curious what your thoughts are and how we can make meaningful relationships between students and teachers without needing to be troublemakers.
The question is about shidduchim, but it's a question really, I guess, in general, and that is the good kids that go unnoticed. So throughout elementary school, throughout middle school, throughout Masifta, if it's a girl, throughout high school, it may be, what do they need? They don't need much, or so we think, right? And then it comes to shidduchim. This question is about shidduchim. Then it comes to shidduchim or seminaries or big decisions, and all of a sudden, they have no one to turn to. The answer is that, both of us, both sides of the fence have to do a better job, meaning that our yeshivas have to do maybe a better job at not just focusing on those that need it. I shared a story once earlier this year. I'm going to share it again because it's literally this, and that is a Rosh Yeshiva in Lakewood started yeshiva, and he went to Rabbi Berbachtville, Yeshiva of South Fallsburg, and he said, I have a half hour every night after Mariv, right? Who do I speak to in learning? The 10% of the kids that need, mental health, or the 90% that want to talk about the Gemara Shutaisvis? And Rabbi Ber said to him, you're making a big tois. The 90% that you think don't need mental health also need mental health, right? So I think one of the mistakes we make as mechanchim, as educators, is that we think that the only kids that need the help are the kids that need the help. Really, obviously, everyone needs help. So that's our job. It's a push to the Rebbeim and the Moras to be more proactive in pushing relationships for even the regulars, so to speak. On the other end, if you're a parent of a child who's a goody-goody, who's a regular kid, don't rest on your laurels, right? Don't just say, push that relationship. Push that relationship.
How?
Don't wake up and right before shidduchim, right before seminary, says, my daughter doesn't have a mora.
How do you push that? What do you do?
Reach out, to the moras and try to foster, again, if it's a Rebbe, it's a lot easier because you could create a chavrusa shaft. You could try to create that relationship. I don't know girls' high schools, which is probably where this is, the question is asked. When my daughter starts 9th grade next year, Sarah, maybe I'll be able to give an answer. But I think there are plenty of, mechanechos in girls' high schools that are available if you reach out to them. I think just sitting back and just expecting someone to be there for your daughter, which is kind of the question, and for your son, they have a lot of people. At the end of the day, the ones that are pushy get the relationship. So pushy is in one of two ways. Either pushy is because you need it, because you get in trouble, or pushy is because you go after it. Ask the guys in the mirror who gets to speak to Rabbi Moshe and ask him his questions. It's the guys who really push and wait. So
would you say as a system, it sounds like what you're saying is, as a system, it really can't work. But if you're listening to this, you happen to be the lucky one who gets to listen to the learning curve, and here's the secret potion, then be that one. But you're right, for a system, it doesn't work. That's what I hear you saying, which is fine. You could say that. I just want to make sure that we're hearing you correctly.
So this is the finale. So I get to we could quote all our previous episodes. It's like one of those. So Garfield, I'm going to quote you. If you remember, we had Mrs. Devorah Pincus on, right? and she was talking about the gifted child and how we reach him. And you said, I wish we could reach everybody, but we have to focus on the kids that need us more than others. So the system is a system. Every system, by definition, doesn't reach everybody equally. That's what a system is.
Okay. So, I don't think I disagree. I think that it doesn't really matter. I would say to anyone listening, the 40,000 or so, I don't know what our numbers are as of now, but the 300,000 that listen, it doesn't really matter. It's true the system has this weakness, but you as a parent or as a child listening, try to reach out. And like you said, most people, when you reach out, they reciprocate. I remember, this is like a story, like when I realized I wanted to go into being a principal or into chinuch, whenever I had a chance, I would try to meet mechanchim, meet, people in Torah Masorah that were of influence. I was always trying to meet people because I felt like, it's good. It leads to things, and it does.
Right,
So, try to meet people.
but that's you who have a certain type of personality. This is the
Yes.
kid who maybe doesn't have that, so it's not as easy.
It's true. Sometimes parents, I know a trick that some people do, like they'll pay, I don't know if kids are listening. Your parents would never do this, those kids who are listening, but they'll even pay like a young Kola wife to like need a mother's helper to invite a middle school girl to their home and help. I've seen that done. So that's just an idea that's out there. But okay.
Interesting.
Good question.
Interesting. Well, we'll do one more question that we got in from the pre, and then if someone wants to raise it, if we have brave hand raisers in the audience or chatters, you could text a question on the chat if you go on the bottom. If not, we'll continue from there. Here's the next question. Thank you for your excellent episodes. I really enjoy your insight and exploration of current issues. Way to get your question asked. No, yeah. I think there's an we're going.
Oh, getting nervous. Go ahead.
However, no, there's no however. Can you please give perspective on the trending issue of Mesivta boys not attending Shacharis? Okay, this is obviously an assumption. Are we as parents out of touch, old-fashioned, too exacting in our standards? All of the above, or all of the above. When we wake our sons expecting them to attend a minyan, how are they considered an einus if they choose to turn over in bed and sleep for hours, namely the better part of the day? I can't tell you the pain we feel watching this happen day in, day out. We stopped waking them up more than once, and we will never comment on those coming into the Suda after the first course, I guess on Shabbos. I understand that Shacharis attendance is not an expectation in Beis Medrash in most yeshivas. Please help. So there's a lot of assumptions being made here about Shacharis attendance in yeshivas, Shacharis attendance in general. Rabbi Garfield, we're both not in Mesivta, but we both taught in Mesivta.
And we went to Mesivta.
We both went to Mesivta. Yeah.
The one thing I would say right away, it's not a trend. This has been around for 40 years, or at least I could testify to 35 years ago when there were those boys who just never came. And I don't think it's a new thing. But I'll tell you my reaction. The empathy and the understanding that getting up for Shacharis is hard for some people. Some people have it easy. Their body rhythms, their focus, their enjoyment of davening, whatever factors. There could be a whole range of factors. But, the bottom line is that there are children for whom it is very hard. And I would caution you, and it sounds like this parent is trying to do this, but you gotta really do it, is not to find their entire Judaism on that one criteria, because being a successful Jew has a lot of components. Going to Shacharis is a value. But I think because it's so hard, we make it the value, as if it's one of the top 3 things a kid has to do to be a good Jew, because otherwise we think they won't go. And I'm not sure that that's a healthy way to motivate kids to go to Shacharis. I wonder, I haven't done a study, but if you think about, we could do it right now. Think about the boys when we were in yeshiva that had trouble going to Shacharis, right? Are they any less successful adults in terms of their ruchnias? I mean, it's very hard to judge that, but I would suspect they are not. That as they matured, as their life evolved, they figured it out. Either they go to a later Shacharis or they don't. I don't know. But I've seen many students who struggled with it mightily in 11th grade, but it worked out. They worked out as Jews. And if we hyper focus on it and throw all the guilt and make it like they're totally unsuccessful because of this one metric, I think we risk throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I don't know if that fully answers it. Would you say that I've given it enough?
So I actually have a lot to say on this.
By all means, say.
But I want you to finish your thoughts before I.
Well, I think that's my main reaction. You could get into the kid's getting up at 4 p.m. I mean, he's obviously going to sleep. Something's going on. I mean, that's beyond. But a normal bacher who struggles with getting up for Shacharis, I feel like we should, respectfully encourage it, but not treat it like it is the definition of a successful Jew. That's all I got.
So I want to share 2 stories, a cute story and then a story with me and Rabbi Moshe Grylak. But I do think, to give context, I'm going to generalize in an extreme way. There are 2 very different types of boys that don't go to Shacharis. There is the boy that is struggling and is struggling. And he doesn't go to Shacharis, not because he struggles with Shacharis. He doesn't get out of bed, and he's not doing well in yeshiva, and he wakes up at 10, and he gets around, and he's sluggish. That boy is not a Shacharis issue. That boy is a teenage struggle issue. And that boy, right, Shacharis maybe is the symptom that you get to see at home over the weekends when he's home. That's not a Shacharis issue. And then there is, which I'm just being medayik from father, mother. It sounds like father. But I like to decide who the questions are. I'm sensing from the father the following, and if I'm not, then I'm making up my own question. And that is, this is like one of those kids who's a good kid, and he's steiging, and he's learning, and he's not getting up for Shacharis. What's going on here? It's that. This is a kid who's learning and not getting up for Shacharis. And that, you said, is not a new trend. That is a big challenge, conversation in yeshiva about the boys that will learn late at night, the boys that will learn till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then mishachris. The boys that will wake up late in the morning, not have davening as a big chelik of their avodah, of their daily schedule, and then have a wonderful day in yeshiva. That is much more, I think, prevalent and bigger topic of what you do. I will just share that when I was in the Mir, so it was Yivamis, Yud Beis and Bebeis. We're both learning Yivamis now, Rabbi Garfield, right? The Araisa.
Yes.
We're in the Samachs.
Yes.
But Yivamis, Bebeis, and Bebeis. And I went to complain to Rabbi Asher. This is 24 years ago, as crazy as that sounds. That is that long ago. I went to complain to Rabbi Asher that he's going too fast. And because in the Mir, I was coming from Fallsburg. No, I didn't complain. I said, what can I do?
There's 800 guys in the share. It's too fast for Ari Schonfeld.
First of all, then it wasn't 800. It was 300.
Okay.
And I was really complaining. I was like holding on for dear life. I said to him, what should I do? And he looks at me and he says, where do you daven in the morning? Imagine, that was his question. How do I follow Shir if you're going so fast? And the Basher said to me, Wo davenst dir in the free?
Really? Wow. Okay.
So then he paused. I didn't answer. And he said, you daven in the Shtiblach. Right, in the Shtiblach in Beis Yisrael, right? The 8 o'clock, the 8:30. I actually daven in a yeshiva, which I don't think is around anymore, called Shari Tvuna. Ever heard that yeshiva? Remember that yeshiva? Rabbi Levin, someone Rabbi Z, last name of Rabbi Z, Shari Tvuna. Anyway, that's where I daven. So he said, do you daven in yeshiva? And I said, no. And Abasha looked at me and he said, Ich habe keinmal nicht gesehen ein Mensch, was matzliach gewesen in Leben, was nicht gedavent in yeshiva. Which means, I'll translate.
Wow.
I never met anyone that was matzliach in life who didn't daven in yeshiva. And he was imploring me and begging me to daven. And he said to me, the avarabba in the shtiblach doesn't compare to the avarabba in yeshiva. That was his soft little, push. But so what I would say is that I do think that davening is, you say, people that don't go to Shacharis that kind of work it out later in life. I think Shacharis is and should be a big part of Avodas Hashem. That being said, teenagers, and this is obviously a boy thing, not a girl thing, because Shacharis is a chiyuv, a tefillin for boys, but girls have to wake up early in the morning also. Somehow they stroll out of bed and make it to yeshiva. Teenagers who are learning late at night, they struggle to wake up for Shacharis, and to your point, Rabbi, it's not in their minds, it doesn't passel them. It doesn't invalidate their learning. And so even though you as a balabas, you as a parent, whose Shacharis is the part of the day in which you connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for them it's 12 hours a day, and therefore Shacharis is a struggle, and in their world, it's not the psol that you think it is, and you just have to recognize that.
Or another thing is, boys come home, let's say they're in yeshiva and they're pushing themselves, and they come home and they want to really veg it, which, I think is shocking for parents who are new to that world, but it's much more common.
So I'll just share it. I don't want to get too personal, right? But I have 3 boys in Mesivta and Beis Medrash, and Kol Yishurin, where I daven on Shabbos, an amazing shul, starts at 8:15 on Shabbos morning, right? Wow. Woof. It is not often that my boys come to daven with me. Now we could have a separate, which we have discussed in the past, so I should daven with them, right? Okay, fine, separate conversation. It is much more often that they daven next door to my house in a wonderful shtibel at 9 o'clock, right? Similar conversation. This is after a long week of learning. So, and we'll leave it at that.
All right. Let us move on.
I say people that are texting in questions. So I'm going to ask you this question, Rabbi.
This is a new one, just came in?
It just came in. I'm going to read it to you.
Okay.
And I say to the crowd, those that are here, if you raise your hand by pressing the reaction button, right? It goes like right? Or make what, right? Is there a hand raise?
Yeah, it's on the
Something,
bottom. It
some
says
emoji.
raise hand. Yeah.
We'll find you and we'll call on you.
Yeah.
Here's the question to you. My older middle grade son is a bright, fun-loving, sweet, and fairly innocent kid. He has been getting closer to a couple of boys in his class who feed into his love of excitement and are fun to hang out with. One of the boys has some social challenges, and we initially thought it was nice for our son to be his friend, almost as a chesed. However, and I guess a lot of people listening can associate with this struggle, as time has gone on, we are not so thrilled with some of the things he is picking up from them. Pop culture, exposure to some inappropriate behaviors, language, right? Nothing terrible, unsafe, but not our hashkafa. We don't want him to be a carbon for the sake of being friends with this troubled boy. How do we go about dealing with this situation? We've been told him, sometimes we say our son is not available, that only works so much time, so often. This is, I imagine, anyone who lives in a neighborhood that has a lot of neighbors, and a frum neighborhood has some neighbors that you're not so thrilled with. That's just the reality. You're not going to get up and move. Not everyone can move to Houston as fast as Houston is growing. So let's call this the neighbor, the neighbor challenge, Rabbi Garfield.
Yeah. Very legitimate. A very legitimate question.
We got you.
Yeah,
the crowd got you.
Yeah, I have to think. Gonna have to think about that. I would say, I hope this is the best answer, but this is what comes to mind, is to discuss it openly with your child.
What age? Now remember, middle school.
It says upper middle school, so I'm going to assume older middle school. I'm going to assume the 7th grade, let's say, right? So I would think that you could have a conversation with your son and say, listen, you know our family, you know our standards. I wonder, when you hear other things or this particular boy, like, is that a bad hashpah? What do you think? Now, if he says, he gets all indignant and says, it's not that.
Very possible.
Right. Well, then I would say your issue is broader, meaning like you're not in a situation where you can really influence him in that way. And then it's a whole nother level of parenting finesse that's required, because you have a situation where the channels of communication are very strained. Meaning, I would hope that a parent could work to develop a relationship with their kid where they could have a conversation. Again, you're not answering anything. There's no policy being made. It's a conversation. What do you think about, right? Do you think this is a good hashpah? I'd be curious what the child would say.
You're leaving it up to your son?
No, I'm starting a conversation. I'm bringing awareness. Now, I'd be curious what the child would say, because the child might say, yeah, it's really not the best thing, but I feel bad for him, and I've already been friends. And then that would be an opening to have a conversation. It's not so push it, right? Just to drop a nebuch, just to drop him. Maybe you could discuss how to handle when he does things that are inappropriate. Maybe you're open to that conversation. I know children who even in my school, like I can have conversations like that with middle school boys. If it's calm and it's just the two of you and there's no extra emotional attacks and you're not doing it as a got you or we're changing policy, just a reflective conversation. I think, I'd like to think that could be a approach. I think that when you get into answering the kid, and especially in a larger community, you can't watch your kid and control where he goes. It's a very hard parenting to use control on a social environment with a kid that's in your child's social sphere. So the only way to really do it is through chinuch. Chinuch means talking, teaching, demonstrating, problem solving, engaging. I know it's foreign for a lot of people. Like, what? Talk to your kid? We would never do that.
My parents never talk to me.
Right. There's no room for talking. Yeah, there is. I mean, that's what you're going to have to do. You could try mandating. Go for it. Let me know how it goes. Season 5, you'll write back how you tried to mandate and your kid ran away or something. But chas v'shalom. Anyway, what do you got?
So, not so different than you, but to me, I will say like this. I will share, but a little different. But a little.
Yeah, I would hope you're a little different. You're not.
Come on, after all,
not talking to kids. Crazy.
First of all, this is a massive challenge that anyone who lives in a frum neighborhood has. Unless you live in, New Square. Maybe they don't have challenges in New Square where everyone is accepted.
What do you think? There's no one who's pushing that.
Right. There's always
a different envelope.
There's always the neighbors to the left of you that you don't want your child to be, necessarily sleepovers with. And there's always neighbors to the right of you that you want your daughter to have a sleepover with. And then, and there's wherever you are, there's people that are below you, and then there's people that are above you. I don't want to quote today's Gemara, but it's today's Gemara in Iraisa, right?
I'm behind.
You're behind. About getting a neighbor that's the Gemara discusses getting a neighbor that's one step above you to learn from your neighbor. But here's, I think, the challenge. The challenge is, and as we always say, age matters. If your son or your daughter is in 8th grade, 10th grade, it's a lot easier than if he's or she is in 6th grade, in 4th grade, in 8th grade, in 5th grade. And I think what parents have to realize is one of two things. You can move. You're not moving, right? You're not moving. These are your neighbors. You want to call the neighbors, good luck. You have to, and this is just, it's about everything in life. Because as you said, you're not going to be able to control so much of what your child does. You are going to have to fill your child up with such chinuch and love and self-esteem and confidence and perseverance that then when they go to their neighbor's house, and their neighbor's house is feeding them something that has a hechsher. I'm giving an extreme example because that probably happens much less. Your son or daughter will be able to stand for that. I heard an amazing story. I actually saw it. Shimon Russell was talking to Baron Leib Steinman, and he asked him, I have a parent who came to me. They have a daughter who they want to get to break up with their boyfriend. How do they get their daughter to break up with their boyfriend? Baron Leib was 100 years old. He's living in Bnei Brak. You would think, what does he know about a girlfriend and a boyfriend, right? So Baron Leib turned to Shimon Russell, and he said, "It's crazy. Does the girl know that the father loves her more than the boyfriend does?" And he's like, what? Yes. Does the girl know that does she feel that the father loves her more than the boyfriend does? Because if she doesn't feel that, why should she break up with the boyfriend? Right? Like a mic drop.
Wow.
Mic drop. So your achrayus as a parent is to create such a not just self-esteem, but a feeling of pride with your child that when these things come up, no matter what age, they will be able to overcome them.
Yeah, must.
Okay. We have a couple of questions coming in.
Let me read you the question.
Okay.
Here we go. I am concerned about the use of classroom technology in some of our frum schools. Kahoot, GimKit, access to internet devices, even if filtered, etc. I recently read The Digital Delusion by Jared Cooney Harbath. The research is clear and shocking. Screens in the classroom actively harm learning. The data I read was overwhelming. Are mechanchim in our community aware of this data? I'm wondering how you see this data and associated trends, removing technology from the classroom, impacting from chinuch world, and if you see mechanchim discussing the latest research on technology in the classroom. I'd appreciate your perspective.
I don't have the data, so I can't really speak to that. Maybe this is one of those where being a little old school makes you look good. Yeshiva Katan Manhattan is pretty old school, not on purpose. Maybe this gives me pause. I'm trying to get more smart boards and pre-theme boards.
Maybe you should read Jared Cooney Harbath's
Maybe
book.
I read it. Maybe I knew it intuitively, which is why we don't have. When I was in 8th grade Rebbe, I did not use a smart board. And my excuse and I refused to, mainly because I did not want to learn how to use it. But my excuse was, my shita that I created was, in Mesivta, you're going to use smart boards, right? So I wanted to get the boys used to Mesivta, that which I think has merit. I can't speak to I didn't read the book. I do think that there is so many different modalities of teaching today that we have to reach. There's audio, there's text, and yes, if you have a classroom and that you teach your Gemara and everything is on, the board, on the whiteboard, on the smart board, I think that creates a certain distraction. However, Kahoots is this cute little game that people usually use for like testing and quizzes, right? And it's a way to gamify quizzes. What can I tell you? It doesn't bother me at all if a teacher is going to make a pie chart and make a Venn diagram, and instead of coloring it in with a marker, they're going to use they have it ready pre-programmed beforehand. I think the question is how to have as everything. It's all about balance. But I don't know what they do in Houston. We're actually not a big smartboard school, Yeshiva Manhattan. We're an old style school just because of our building, and it's hard to get things in and hook things up. So really, we're old school. But
I'm gonna say something that is pretty wild. So get ready, prepare yourself, all the TLC listeners. Just a little background. When I was a Rebbe in Atlanta, my first few years, I decided I wanted to go into being a principal, and I wanted to get a additional degree because my master's was not in education or leadership, it was in counseling. So like I went back. So at that time, John Hopkins University, which is where I was affiliated with from there, Israel, had a new master's. This is 2003. Okay.
Okay.
A brand new master's. That was the only, at the time, the first and only online master's you could get. And it was a partnership with an organization called ISTE, ISTE, which is the International Society of Technology and Education. And we had to go, besides like them co-sponsoring it. So it was like high tech, quote unquote, but we had to go to their conference, the ISTE conference, which I went to. I forgot where it was. It was like part of the requirement of the degree of the master's. So I did all of that. And so I remember the reason I'm saying this is here we are in 2026. So was that 23 years later? I remember the excitement and the anticipation that the education community had, not the firm one, just in general. I was there. I was at the conference about the hope of technology transforming education. It was like at that time, people couldn't get enough of it. It was going to save the world. And then I remember when a very wealthy person, I won't mention who and what, but a certain foundation invested iPads in every school, and they were trying to get, you could get for free for your school iPads. And it was like, that was also maybe 20 years ago, maybe a little more. And we've been through smart boards. We've been through, I think anyone who has, you know, is of my age, so to speak, and seen it, we've seen the great promise that people felt technology had. And here's the statement I'm going to say. I don't think, as of now, 23 years later, the net gain of technology has done anything to move the education field forward. In fact, if anything, it's put us back. Now, that doesn't mean I'm against all of technology. I think there's a place for it, but I just mean collectively, the amount of distraction, the amount of resources, the amount of energy, finances, all that stuff we've put into technology has been such a waste of focus. And in the end of the day, true learning takes place by human interaction, with deep thinking, with chazara, practicing skills. That's where learning takes place, engagement. And technology has yet to be able to really provide that in a meaningful way. So when I look at the entirety of the 23 years and all the money and all the ideas and all the latest trends and like all of it, I still don't feel it has moved the ball forward collectively in education.
Could I agree and add one caveat?
Surely.
Yes, thank you. The child that needs to learn a little different, right? For them, for that kid, having the graphics and having maybe the storytelling and seeing it on the smartboard. In other words, for that kid who really is a visual learner.
There's a place for technology. I'm just saying collectively. Individually, there are technologies that are useful, specific technologies here and there, you know, or a Rebbe who really knows how to use a smartboard effectively, which is rare. But there are a few who actually know how to use it. But I'm just saying globally, you know, but
technology, but Rabbi, technology is here. So what? So if it's,
we have to be very slow. This is what I would say, and we do this, you know, in my school. You have to be very slow. Like I would never allow the school, I try not to, let us get ahead of any teacher where we're pushing it. Meaning, if you have a teacher who has an interest, ability, knowledge of a certain technological thing, I'm like, okay, you know, if you could use it, that's okay. But we've lived through schools where they said everyone has to use a whiteboard. And the teacher's like, what? Everyone has to use a digital report, you know, a digital grading book. No, don't put the technology ahead of the educator's ability, focus, and strength. That's what I'm saying. Like, keep the technology. Right. Technology is not solving. It's a tool. It's a tool. Listen, there are people who have dyslexia who could audio. They can read it to you. I mean, there are definitely technological tools that are out there, but globally, it is not saving the day. It's just not.
Right. Okay. I have 3 questions that were just posted by what's it called, and I'm going to ask all 3 one at a time. I guess I'll take. Well, we'll do one at a time. Here's the first one. Ready, Rabbi? This is for you.
Yes.
How should we react if we discover a secret account or a hidden app on a child's phone? Now, we're not going to even say the names of the people.
You know that there's some family like that this is happening, who's like watching.
Before I asked the question, so you'll answer, but I want to tell you a very terrifying story. Was it Dr. Blumenthal, Dr. Norman Blumenthal? Maybe it was him. One of was speaking to a crowd of Rabbanim and Flatbush. Just goes back 15 years about, you know, hidden apps and accounts, and he read this terrifying, like inappropriate account that was on Facebook, which was the thing back in the day. I don't know what it is today, TikTok or Snapchat today. And the crowd of Rabbanim and Rebbitzins were like shaking. And they said, and here's the catch. Ready? It's the daughter of someone in this room.
That's great.
I mean, it's not great, but and everyone's looking around like,
Right.
and you don't know.
All right.
And so how does he know? Crazy. Because he walked into the school and he went over to this girl, teenage girl, whatever the school was in. And he said, hey, could you give me your phone number? And she's like, I'm going to call the cops. Who are you? I don't know you, right? How dare you? Creep. And he went home and he went on Facebook and he sat there, made up a random name and said, will you try to befriend her? And she accepted him. So now he has access to everything she has. Fine. So these are obviously, as we say this in joke, these are obviously very concerning things. Anyone who's raising teenagers, how should we react if we discover a secret account, a hidden app on a child's phone?
So I'm going to shock the chinuch world once again.
Gee.
Yeah. I mean, I can't help myself. I'm going to say, talk to the child. Is that like crazy? Like, say to the child, well, first of all, I find it interesting. You're going around the child's back. Okay, I don't know. That has to be dealt with.
I don't know. Your child's phone was open and you see, I don't know.
Sounds a little
TikTok.
fishy.
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, the truth is that the mistake was made when you gave the child an improperly filtered smartphone. It happened to be that Tag is exceptionally good. They have a new technology that is very, very good at this. So, FYI, any parent, you should deal with that proactively. You've obviously not done that and whatever, so we're dealing with this. But that's part of the danger of giving a child a phone is that these kind of things are going to happen, So again, the child is not a pariah, Yetzirah criminal. The child is normal and did a normal thing. So I would have a conversation. And I don't have a problem with there being some kind of consequences, meaning, because this happened, we thought that the phone was secure. Clearly it's not. So we have to either limit something, you switch phones or get it fixed up, or, that could be like, quote unquote, a consequence. I don't have a problem with that. But I think that, again, the chinuch is in, and we've talked about this forever with Rabbi Yaakovson and all this stuff. The chinuch is always in the conversation, the lesson, the engagement. It's never in the anger and the rule and the consequence. That's not the chinuch. Sometimes you have to do that a little. But the chinuch is in your ability to engage. So I would say in this case, you just got to engage. You got to discuss it. Why is it a problem? What does that app do? Why is the child hiding it? What's going on?
So I want to add two things. Recently, I was dealing with a situation where this happened, and the parents called me, and the back and forth with the teenage son, and the kid said to me, in all vulnerability and all honesty, he's like, I don't understand. So my parents want to take away my phone, right? Because I have this app, whatever it was, right? And they're angry at me, right? So I'm going to take my phone. Do they not realize that I have another burner phone in my closet? He was like, straight on. And if they take that away, I'm just going to get another one.
All right.
And he wasn't even being arrogant. He was almost like, what are you doing? That's not how you talk to me. And it reminded me of an amazing framework, or like a framing of the sugya that I heard once from Rabbi Zechariah Greenwald. I went to his chinuch when I was in Eretz Yisrael. This is before I had children, 25 years ago. I know, well, that would be as a bacher, that'd be weird. So it was probably 23 years ago, maybe when my first child was born. He said such an amazing way to set this conversation up, and it stuck with me ever since. And he said, if you're going to have a fight with your teenage son or daughter, let's say it's son, and your teenage son, has this app this phone that you don't like, and he does something horrible, what is the worst thing you could do to your child? What is the worst thing what is your nuclear bomb? The worst thing a parent could do to the child is kick him out of the house. Chas v'shalom, right? That's what you can do, right? Kick him out of the house, right? What is the worst thing a child can do to you? Be Michal Shabbos. Not put on tefillin. Eat treif. So he says, so who's holding a water gun and who's holding a nuclear bomb? It was a mic drop. If you turn your challenged teenage, which this is, if you have a teenage son or daughter who doesn't have a relationship enough with you and isn't confident in, right, that they're hiding apps, which just makes sense. They're hiding apps. They're embarrassed. If you're going to be confrontational with them and fight them, and it's a war and it's a battle, keep in mind that you are going into that battle holding a water gun and they are holding a tank. They're driving a tank. It's an unfair battle. It cannot be a battle. It has to be, it can be with pain. It can be with conversation. As you said, it could be with consequences. But if you think you can just, no more phones. I'm taking away your phone. I'm docking you. I'm grounding you. I'm not saying you can't ground a child. I'm not saying you can't dock a child. But it has to be within the context of a relationship, because they will get another phone and they hold all the keys to the future of your
relationship. I know that people, I don't know the people listening, but there are people who find this kind of talk too nut-based and new. Yeah, it's like new age and everything. And I would just say to them, I hear you. You tell me the alternative. Like, I'm open. I'm not, maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're wrong. You have to beat the kid up. We just don't see that works. It's not like a shita. It's just like practical. It doesn't work. I don't know what to say. Like, I'm sorry that we're so nice to kids. I wish, if it wasn't, I wouldn't be. But Lamaisa, I don't know another way. I just don't.
I want to share something a little bit almost like funny, and that is, I was at the Manal's conference recently that you ran so unbelievably well, at Thomas Manal's conference. And I think someone asked one of the Manalim, in your 25 years of chinuch, what have been the biggest changes, right? The great question. And I was sitting there and thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I'm in chinuch for 20 years, right? What would I answer to that question? I never know. I was always the little kid. If I was, which I'm asking myself now, right? What would I answer? And I think this is the biggest difference. And I want to explain it with the biggest difference between chinuch today and chinuch 15 years ago is that children and teenagers, partly because of the fact that they are given certain, whether they have exposure in a good way to material, to reading material, to learning, to podcasts, to articles in newspapers. Children today and teenagers today are much less makabel, authoritarian, and much more shava b'shava and equal partners in conversations than they were 20 years ago. Again, I'm not bad or good. There's obviously tremendous challenges with that. But 20 years ago, you were just able to say, this is the way it is. And there was a much more on an overarching way of, okay, Abba, okay, Daddy, that's the way it is. I think the biggest fundamental change, and it's like this in middle school, we explain things to kids. Kids need to be validated and felt and seen and heard. All of these buzzwords, we could chicken and egg it from today till tomorrow, but we're there. And since we're there, to your point, Rabbi Garfield, if you're just going to try to turn back the clock 20 years and say, you had an app on your phone, I'm breaking your phone. If that works for you.
Not in my house, you won't have an app.
Right, not in my house. Chas v'shalom, your son can say to you, your daughter can say to you, okay, bye. And then what? Right? It's almost like, and then what? Right? You want to be tough with your kid until your kid walks out of the house. And then what? Oops.
Do you have any at the time is flying by? We barely started. We have Baruch Hashem, a lot of questions coming in. And do you have another one that just came to you?
Yes. Yes. No. I'm gonna take this one. How's that? Ready?
Oh, go ahead.
In the recently released book, The Well-Educated Child, this is from someone listening here tonight. You know that book, Rabbi? The Well-Educated Child? I don't.
I'm not sure.
The principal has a theory that she only hires teachers who loves kids.
Well, that's the Harlem Center. I actually am familiar with that.
Okay.
Shout out to my dear brother, Sam Garfield, who just sent to me in the mail this Shabbos. So I think it was featured in the Wall Street Journal. Anyway, continue.
Okay.
I just started.
Do you agree? Can you have a great teacher who loves teaching but doesn't love kids? Is it feasible that every teacher will love kids? Wow. So I will just share, when people say to me, hey, should I go into chinuch, right, and in camp, and often counselors are getting married, Rebbe, what do you think? I want to go into chinuch. What do you think? I've shared this before. I'll share it again. My response to them is like a little bit off the beaten path. And I said, if you were not Jewish, would you want to go into chinuch? If the answer is no, then don't go into chinuch. If you're going to chinuch only because of teaching Torah, then maybe become a mag. I don't know. Maybe, then give shiurim and write svarim and give it daf yomi shir and give and do that. But it has to be first and foremost is, do you love the children? And it sounds so cliche. So I'm not we had Rav Eli Brudny, right? Rav Eli Brudny in the Q&A at the conference was asked if you have someone who's a Talmid Chacham in Yerushalayim, and the other person is just much better with kids, and he connects to kids, and he likes kids more. Who should you hire? And Rav Eli Brudny said such a sharp line. I don't know if you remember it. he said, hire the second one. And he said, a stellar isn't supposed to be a reward for good behavior.
Yeah.
Whoa, right?
Yeah.
That was a Rabbi Britney's line. Of course, the fact that you're a Talmid Chacham and you're Shemayim might help you connect the kids because they'll look up to you. Of course, that should be a chelik. But is it feasible that every teacher will love kids? The good ones do. The great ones do.
Yeah.
No,
I would say it is not. It's not so feasible, but that's not the point. The point is the more you could feel and give over and be genuine. Kamayim Bapanim, the famous movement from Shlomo Hoffman, Zichron Livracha, and Meir Simcha Stein, who's written some books, right? The more you could do that, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not like either you love or you don't. You try to love as many kids as you can and give it over as much as you can as often. But the reality is, on a given Tuesday, after you're tired and you were up and you drove and the kid's doing an annoying thing, it's sometimes hard. Right. It's like saying, can you be a good parent if you don't love your kid? I mean, you can't really, but that doesn't mean every parent is infatuated with their children every moment of parenting.
Right. My father-in-law, I don't know if he's listening, but my father-in-law likes to say
of course
that.
He's listening. What do you think?
I'm staring at him. Hello. Could you let me play my game?
Oh, is that your father-in-law? I don't know. I was wondering who that nice man was.
My father-in-law likes to say that.
He's a good guy. Yeah. What does he like to say?
My father likes to say that every kid is his favorite. It just depends on the day where different ones are favorites. Whoever needs it the most becomes the favorite.
Okay.
Right. So, but one thing is that, not every Rebbe has to be the Rebbe that's a wow. There are certain Rebbeim that are more old school and more, not distant, but more authoritarian, especially in the younger grades. And that works and that connects and that's amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they don't love them.
Right.
This is the chiddush of Shlomo Hoffman and the Kamayim, is that it's not about what you say. It's not about what you do. It's an inner mitzias that a child picks up on.
Right.
And I think we know that. I think the people in your life who you feel love you, care about you, and the people who less so. And it's not so much only what they do. It's how you feel when you're around them.
Rabbi, quick question for you. This one I'll ask. This just came in. Is it right to push or bribe my kid to play with a friend or a neighbor who doesn't have friends when she wouldn't otherwise want to in order to teach good midos? Wow, nice one. This just was put on the chat. Is it right to bribe my kid or to push my kid to play with a friend or a neighbor who doesn't have friends in order to teach her good midos?
It's funny because I grew up. I had that. My father, he should be well.
You had no friends. You people were.
No, he was.
I would have been your friend.
He was a big advocate of pushing me to befriend some children who didn't have other friends. He didn't bribe me, although I don't mind collecting now if that's an option. I didn't get bribed, but I definitely got pushed. Yeah, I think there's a place for that. Encourage. I would use the word encourage instead of bribe or push. I would encourage it. I think it is good midos. And I think at the end of the day, when they're together, the two of them, and no one's watching, and it's not so bad usually. The kid is. But I did experience some difficult times with these type of friends. I mean, one of them had a nebuch situation in life, and I remember I got the new Cliffhangers racing car game for Hanukkah for my aunt. You know what that is? Do you even know what that is?
No idea.
Okay. Cliffhangers was...
If it wasn't basketball or baseball, I don't know it as a kid.
It would go around, and it went up the wall. It was like electric cars where you press these things, and it would go up the wall. It was amazing. But if you pressed it too hard, it would break because it was too much power. And I said to this person, do not press it hard. And part of his social challenge was not within his scope. And he broke my cliffhangers. And that was a hard thing for me. So, but it's good. You taught me well, and it's okay. But, go ahead.
I think cliffhangers, first of all, are like a muscle for certain kids that draw up the wall and they climb up walls.
I have to Google it.
I think the answer to this question is a one-word answer, 100% yes. Your daughter, I don't like the word bribe, but I think
bribing was a bit much.
I think it's very healthy to teach your son or daughter the value of extending her comfort zone to play with a friend, not every day, not every minute, but and explain to her. It's what empathy is. It's real, awesome empathy, and it's really, it's something that really speaks to the fact of being able to be in someone else's shoes. Hey, you have so many friends. She doesn't. Invite her over with her friends. Maybe go out for a little bit after school. Again, obviously, it depends on the age. But this is a tremendous opportunity to teach your son or daughter midas. And I actually would prefer not to bribe. Again, if she's 7, maybe. If she's 9, 10,
Even
11,
7, it's like, I think bribing is
right.
uh,
But
all right. Can I share? A friend of mine sent me a voice note just now with a question, so I think that would be fun. Let me play you his voice note.
okay.
Let's see what it is. I'll play it for you. Here we go.
TLC, this is my question. How much should we be educating our kids about the Holocaust, similar episodes of Jewish oppression, and anti-Semitism generally? The Holocaust was a constant in my childhood. I grew up around survivors, and we had survivors visit our school regularly. Kids these days have not had the same exposure to the Holocaust, and I believe that October 7th and the surge in anti-Semitism that has resulted since has been a rude awakening for some of today's kids. How should we be educating our kids, both in and out of school, on these topics and preparing them to confront this aspect of our history and place in the world? Thank you.
I thought that was interesting because it's so timely, I guess, and we haven't really we never talked about Holocaust education.
We have not talked about Holocaust education. I struggle because I think, obviously, Holocaust education in my family, every family has their own relationship with the Holocaust, and usually there's stories in every family. We still live with the Holocaust very, very strongly in my family. But as always, I think age matters. I think the challenge is you don't want to scare children. And it's very easy to scare children. So what happens? So what happens is that Torah Masorah puts out videos for Asar B'Teves about the Holocaust. And what it really is, it's heroes of the Holocaust, right?
Right.
And
like
it's Emunah, and it's great stories of the sukkah and the matzah and the oil.
Right.
And it's not the terrors, Rahman al-San, of the Holocaust.
Right.
I think high school, and and I don't think we do a great job. I don't, because it's not part of the core curriculum. But I think in elementary
Mildly.
school,
It's not part of the core curriculum. It sounds like it's even on the radar.
It's not on the radar. It's not. It's not. But I could just say in my lane, I'm in elementary school. I think we do. We bring in survivors. We names not numbers is something we did in our school. A Rebbe of ours, his father was just nifter, used to come in and speak to the boys, and we've had people speak to the boys about the Holocaust and about anti-Semitism. But you have to realize, we live in Manhattan. It's a challenge. Certain boys, and I walk in the street with my yarmulke and my tzitzis out, and I don't have that. But some people walk in the street with a baseball cap. So it's almost like they don't feel the need as parents. Don't teach my kid about the fears of anti-Semitism. I'm afraid of him to go on the bus in the morning sometimes. So we have to really balance this delicate, if we want to give this big, huge, broad stroke of anti-Semitism in Klal Yisrael's history, when we also want to keep our kids not scared to come to yeshiva in the morning.
I hear you. I mean, I definitely remember growing up, the survivors were much more part of.
They were there.
Our librarian, Ms. Bodenheimer, and others, Al Shalom. But it is a sensitive, especially in the world we live in today, post September 7th, where anti-Semitism has really become, part of what we talk about, part of what's going on, right? We just had this horrible article in the New York Times. It's like a standard kind of challenge for us.
But you talk about that in 7th grade?
No, yeah. First of all, 7th grade, yeah, and subtly, meaning I wouldn't say the world is. But the idea that Esav sonas Yaakov, and that even in the Gullus, it's a regular theme of discomfort and, political. I happen to teach Jewish history to 8th grade girls, and it does come up, the idea of using the courts to be, to anti-Semitism in court and, issues like that.
I would much rather stress, and Rabbi Brudny spoke about this at the conference, the Havdalah ben Yisrael Amim, right? To use anti-Semitism to show how different we are than the Umas Ha'olam, that we are the Am Segula, and speak about our uniqueness, and maybe that's why they hate us. But to focus, really on the fear, the scary parts of anti-Semitism in an elementary school setting and through 8th grade.
Right.
I get nervous stressing about it too much in today's society. Maybe that makes me, I don't know, weak a little bit.
Interesting question. I mean, what is the message? What message do we want the Holocaust to teach? I think that the Gedolei Yisrael have discussed it a little, but
the answer is that it's an impossible to learn. Hashkafic from the Holocaust is hard. We struggle with it till today to explain the Holocaust. So, and herein lies the rub. Ready? When we're teaching Holocaust studies, we're not doing it in Gemara with a Rebbe. We're doing it in the afternoon,
right,
with an English teacher.
Right.
We want that English teacher who isn't the child's Rebbe to be the one
For
to
sure not,
define
right. For sure
the
not.
hashkafic response of the Holocaust. What are you
Sure
crazy?
not.
So that's why we don't. I'll put it this way. I think in Olam Yeshivas, I don't think there's a great response, right, or a great what's it called way to.
So maybe it's a fair question. The person essentially is saying, like, especially in the wake of October 7th and the anti-Semitism we're experiencing, we might want to rethink how we
Right.
teach that major aspect of anti-Semitism.
I'm going to ask you one more question.
I can't believe it's 8 o'clock already. What is going on here?
9 o'clock. You're in
Oh,
Houston.
9 o'clock. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you one more question. It's a fascinating question about teaching Tanakh. You ready?
Okay. Okay. An area I'm so proficient in. Go ahead.
It has to, the background of the question is the child doesn't have clinical anxiety, but the child is a little anxious based on therefore.
Okay.
There are Jewish books about Hanukkah, Seder, even parts of Tanakh that can get bloody, violent, and sometimes gory, especially for our oivim, for our enemies. This riles up certain kids or could even make them nervous. I certainly don't want to censor Chazal or Tanakh, but what are the guidelines, if any, when reading in the home and especially in school for avoiding the bloodier aspects of Jewish history and Makairis, especially with younger children? Wow. Great question.
Yeah. I never heard that one before. What has come to mind is a conversation that I had with the Rosh Yeshiva in Baltimore of Aaron Feldman Shlita, but it was about a different topic, but I think it's the same kind of answer. He was talking about the more like natsnius components that come up in saying natsnius is the wrong expression, sexual challenges and things that come up in the psukim that a kid might not be aware of, and
Shir Hashirim.
Obviously. Yeah, but even in psukim, even to Chumash,
right?
Things that happen that a kid is like doesn't know about, and so he was very emphatic, very, very strong, that the Rebbe should just teach it. It's part of the Torah, and just teach it as a fact. And you'll be surprised how easy kids are. We're all freaking out, but kids, they just they roll with it. Most of them don't really fully understand it, but whatever. Either way, it's that's what he said. He felt very strongly that the message we're giving is that the Torah is there to learn, and everything is part of the world, and it's a very healthy message in a way that it's not like these inyanim are like somehow chutz from the Torah, So I don't know. That's what's coming to my mind is that if you're teaching Tanakh and you don't skip to those gory parts, but for whatever reason it comes up.
Right.
Let's say the brothers when they went to kill Shechem and the way whatever's in the psukim, I think you teach it. I don't think you don't sugarcoat it. It's part of the Torah. What happened to the Egyptians or whatever.
Right. So
I think that's the derech. I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious what you have to say.
I struggle with this as a Rebbe. Really went through this because I think when you're teaching fourth grade and the Egyptians and the Mitzrayim, they sink and some like lead and some like straw. You make it into a shtick. I think kids
really
bounce off their back.
Yeah.
But I was an 8th grade Rebbe and I taught Malachim Beis. And let me tell you, Malachim Beis has some real gory like shish kebab poles.
Pelagish Megiva.
No, Pelagish Megiva is not Malachim Beis, but
a
lot of gore. And I struggled to teach the Torah they could take away from it because the kids were struggling with it. My 8th graders were struggling. Rebbe, these are our tzaddikim. These are the Nevi'im. And I actually went to David Cohn about this. I went to Kiva Tats about this. I went to David Cohn. I went to some.
Great. Wow. What a question. Let's hear. What did they say?
So Rav David Cohn almost slapped me across the face.
What's
the matter with you? He was screaming. Rav David Cohn was Gavaldik, my Rav's father, Halig Rav David Cohn Shlita. He thought I was nuts. He's like, I don't understand. It was the Ratzon Hashem that this is what should be done to them. I said, I know, but like to a kid today, it sounds barbaric. Barbaric. It's the Nevi'im. What's the matter? He thought I was mamish a kaifer. He thought I was mamish off my rocker.
Wow. And
what Rabbi Akiva Tats told me that he struggles. He's a classic Rabbi Akiva Tats, so I consider him one of my rebbeim, such a holy Jew. He said, I struggle with some of these questions, but it bothers me that I struggle with them.
Interesting.
That's what he said to me. So I try to talk about the fact that when it is the Ratzon Hashem, even if we don't appreciate how this seems pretty gory, that's where Emunus Chacham comes. Obviously, Emunus Chazal, and this is Nevi'im. And the gory parts, yeah, so if, in terms of the anxiety, I guess, to the actual question, I don't know. That's up to the Rebbe to teach it in a way that isn't so terrifying. Yeah, don't turn off the lights when you're discussing, that part of Navi.
Yeah, I mean, Malachim Beis should not be, maybe not taught to 5th grade, but I don't think most
8th grade.
Yeah, 8th grade. Yeah,
right.
I don't know. I mean, I think from a moral, just to if I was teaching 8th grade, what I would say is that the standards of war right? It's like it's a culture of the society of that time. Their standards, and today
Right.
we have our own standards of war that are different than they were
But it gets very
2,000 years ago.
tricky. It gets very tricky. So, Rebbe, you're saying that the times of the Chazal, that those were immoral and incorrect? These are
No,
very
no, it's
hard questions.
appropriate to behave within the context of your society. So they used to spit in shul. They used to like have these spittoons where you'd come into shul and I don't know what exactly. We could have your father-in-law
Right.
do it for us because he's here. He could fully, gurgitate. But if you did that and spit on the floor, if you did that today, it wouldn't be appropriate. Either Rabbanim did it in 1812 in Texas or wherever they were. The answer is that was appropriate then. It's that. So
Yeah.
I think that when it comes to war and the standards of war, it was a different time, and they fought differently. They used
Yeah.
swords, we used guns. You
Yeah.
know, it's just different, and it takes out that moral. You're right. Today, if someone went and shish kebab someone, that might be a little aggressive. Could be,
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Rabbi, here's the sad part.
absolutely
The sad part
wonderful.
is that there is no real phone number. I mean, right? I don't know why we could ask for no phone number.
Yeah, we could say, listen, for next season, we're
No,
always
or could they could
feedback.
just say thank you. They could leave wonderful messages about Krasatayv.
We're always looking for feedback. And anyway, this is a very valued role that I have, and I have to do it, or else it wouldn't feel like an episode.
So I want to just, I guess, end by and let you have the final say, as you always do, that we consider it a schus to do what we do daily, and this allows us to have a forum to be able to speak to people, to hear from people. And as we move forward to season 4, if those want to post in the chat and we can, say it afterwards or talk about it privately, what they want to see in season 4 as we continue. But really, it's been 3 wonderful seasons. Hopefully the Chazaka means something. We look forward to continue this in the future. I enjoy our back and forth together with you and our readers in Mishpacha magazine and our listeners on the podcast. And, I enjoy what I do. I hope it's a tayelis. I think it is. It's been an
Awesome.
absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and of course, a special shout out to the thousands of people who've come over to me and say, I like listening to you, but you always get Schonfeld right and you always set him straight. So thank you to those thousands of fans who listen with a smart ear. Okay, since I got the last word, and I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so we will end with mentioning our email and phone numbers. The email is thelearningcurve@mishpacha.com. One word, thelearningcurve@mishpacha.com. And you could call in and leave a voice note at 443-686-9339. That's 443-686-9339. Rabari, have a wonderful Zimmer.
Maybe I'll see you again in the summer.
Okay, I
Take
hope
care.
so.
Have a
I hope
wonderful
so. All
summer.
the best.